Welcome back to the Barbecue Lab. My name is David Gafford, and today we're going to take an in-depth look at the Solo Stove Yukon Smokeless Fire Pit. If you're new to the idea of a smokeless fire pit, this is going to be a fun review for you. If you're anything like me, you've sat around the campfire or the fire pit for years and you've watched that smoke just chase you around the fire no matter where you sit. And part of that comes back to the idea that a smokeless fire pit is so appealing so that you don't have to take a shower after every time you have a fire outside. You don't go in smelling like smoke. If you go to bed without taking a shower, your sheets don't smell like smoke. There's so many benefits to having a smokeless fire pit. And so one of the things that I want to talk about first is what makes this a smokeless fire pit. Now, if you look around the outside of the Yukon, you'll notice that there are quite a few holes that are drilled into the bottom and to the top of the unit. These holes allow for the oxygen to be able to be brought in at the bottom of the fire pit and then heated as it rises throughout the sides of the fire pit, because the sides of the fire pit are actually double walled. You have an inside and an outside wall of stainless steel, and as that oxygen comes in, it is heated as it rises through the fire pit, and when it comes out those holes at the top, you have the oxygen that's already superheated and ready to ignite right away, and you have a secondary burn where that oxygen combusts and actually gives you this idea that all of the smoke is going to combust before it comes out of the fire pit. The secondary burn is something that I'd never experienced on a fire pit before the Yukon, and one of the things I love about it is it's flat out mesmerizing to watch. Melissa and I have been watching it for many fires now, and it's one of those things that as we work to achieve that secondary burn with each fire, whenever we get there, it's almost a high five moment for each time because it's so cool. But the idea behind it is that we're going to go ahead and consume any of the smoke that would normally come out of the fire pit by getting that oxygen superheated to ignite to make sure that we don't have any smoke coming out. And it's a fun sight to see. The Solo Stove comes with a fire ring that you place on top of the unit, and that actually keeps the fire centralized, giving you almost a vortex effect whenever you're burning. Now for some of the product dimensions. This Solo Stove Yukon is actually 27 inches wide and 17 inches tall. Now the unit weighs in at 38 pounds, so it's like lifting a bag of salt for your softener. All Solo Stoves are made with 304 stainless steel, so they're going to withstand the elements. They're going to stand up to them, and they have a lifetime warranty to back that up. Solo Stove has many models out there to consider, and the Yukon is actually the largest of all the models that they have. The three sizes that are available at Solo Stove at the time of this recording is the Yukon at 38 pounds, the Bonfire at 20 pounds, and the Ranger at 15 pounds. Now, the Bonfire and the Ranger are considered to be the portable options for Solo Stove, and they actually come with a portable carrying bag, and they're meant to be able to take with you whenever you go someplace. While the Bonfire and the Ranger are really built to be portable, the Yukon is designed to be your backyard entertainment fire pit. This thing is meant to be set on your patio or on your deck, and to be able to have multiple people around it to be able to be the fire feature of your outdoor setting. Now when it comes to fuel, we're talking about wood being the primary source of fuel for the Yukon. Now, Solo Stove actually says on their website that the Yukon is designed to be able to burn 8 to 10 logs at a time with a length of 22 inches or less. Now, the idea of 22 inches or less is to keep wood from protruding above the top of the Yukon, primarily because if you have it sticking up above, that actually promotes smoke and you don't get the smokeless effect that makes these stoves so popular. Now, 8 to 10 logs might sound like a normal amount for any campfire that you might be doing outside, but one of the things I want to point out is that this stove loves wood. I mean, especially the difference between softer woods and hardwood. When you start thinking about the type of wood you're going to burn in your Solo Stove, the type of wood you burn is important. The first time that we lit this thing up, we actually went to a friend of ours who had a log rack in the back of their house, and he said, yeah, come and get some wood and you can give it a shot, because all we had is the wood you see behind me, which is a rack of cherry wood that we use for our smoker to be able to put a nice red ring around briskets. Now, I didn't want to burn a bunch of this wood in the Solo Stove. I would rather just burn some, regular firewood, but I didn't have any. So we went to my buddy's house. He said, go ahead and give this a shot. And we put about 20 pieces of wood that were split in the back of the truck, drove it over here, and lit the Solo Stove Yukon up for the first time. We went ahead and started the Solo Stove off with 3 or 4 splits in addition to our fire starters and our kindling. And what we noticed was that those first 3 or 4 splits were consumed rather quickly. I was surprised how fast this actually consumed that wood. So we went ahead and added on another 6 or 8 logs to be able to get this to that full secondary burn that these are known for. And I noticed that those 6 or 8 logs were also consumed rather quickly as well. So in that 2-hour campfire, this first time that we lit it up, we went through 20 splits of wood that were probably around this large. Now, 20 splits of wood is a lot of wood to be able to go through in a 2-hour campfire. But what I learned was that the type of wood really does matter. So for our second fire, we went ahead and actually used some of this really dense, hard cherry wood for that fire, and we noticed a completely different experience. When we used hardwood to fuel the Solo Stove Yukon, we noticed that it consumed half the amount of wood that we experienced with softer woods. So our suggestion is, if you're going to pick up a Yukon, go ahead and purchase hardwood as opposed to softwood. When you look at those softer woods, you may find that they're cheaper to get a load delivered or cheaper to pick up a load in your area, but they're not going to last as long. So half of the hardwood as opposed to twice the amount of softwood is going to burn about the exact same. We found that by using Facebook Marketplace or Nextdoor or some of the other local sales apps, that we can find people who are selling firewood at a very reasonable cost. And it's not just firewood that's soft firewood, it is hardwood. And using that hardwood is going to be the way to go when you use one of these fire pits. Let's talk about the best way to start the Solo Stove. Now, there are a bunch of different ways to start it, but let me make a recommendation first. Always make sure that you clean the ash out of the Solo Stove before you ever start it up. You want all of those holes that are on the bottom of the Solo Stove to be able to bring in oxygen to the fire and actually feed that fire. And if you leave all of that ash from the previous cook, you're not going to get the airflow that you really want. So first, go ahead and dump out the ash from the unit. Now, the second thing is I would go ahead and make sure that I put down some kind of a fire starter to be able to get this started. Now, you could do anything from newspapers that are wadded up like you would for a charcoal chimney, or you could be able to take anything from a Weber wax starter cube or a Royal Oak tumbleweed, or there's all different types of things you can use. We've even seen some inventive uses of a toilet paper roll and dryer lint, stuffing dryer lint in a toilet paper roll and lighting that up as a fire starter. That works great too. But then on top of that, you want to make sure that you put enough kindling that's going to catch rather quickly to be able to give you that initial start. Now, I'm not a Boy Scout, but I have enough friends that I've watched build fires, that I know it's going to be your fire starter at the bottom, followed by a nice little teepee of kindling, and then you're going to take some splits off of your pieces of wood that are rather small that'll catch in the first couple of minutes of that fire, and then put those above there, and then your smaller splits on top. And we found that that works almost every time. Now, another way that you could do it would be the method that you use for lighting a pizza oven. Now, those of you who have seen someone, or you might have one of your own, one of those outdoor pizza ovens, that outdoor pizza oven, you usually would actually build a little log cabin where you place 2 pieces of wood on the side, and then you place one in front, one in back, and then you begin building a little log cabin with pieces of wood set back and forth. And as long as you build that just like you would light one of those outdoor pizza ovens, you're going to have a great ember of coals to be able to make that burn for many hours to come. When it comes to using the Solo Stove Yukon safely, there's some things to consider. The outside of this unit is deceptive in that it looks cool to the touch, but this unit is actually quite warm when it's being used. Now, if you or your friends feel like putting your feet up against the outside of the Solo Stove, you'll notice rather quickly that it will melt rubber in an instant. If you put your shoes on the outside, they will melt. So I just have to say, you need to be careful, both you and your guests, when using the Solo Stove. Really, anything that comes in contact with the outside of the Solo Stove has the potential to melt and or burn. If you scoot a chair up against it, it could melt the chair. If you have loose articles of clothing, it could actually melt or catch those on fire. So you have to be really careful when using this, as it does get insanely hot on the outside. Now, if you have little children who may not be able to listen to your instructions when it comes to staying away from the outside of the solo stove, one of our recommendations is to actually put something around the solo stove. We've seen everything from people building actual bricks, almost like a brick fire pit, around the fire pit to keep people away. And we've also seen people purchase a fire pit that has a lovely surround or maybe a footrest that you can take out the basin and set the solo stove inside, giving a surround for the solo stove to still get incredibly hot, but still be able to put your feet up on the outside and give a barrier for children so that they can't touch it. If you're going to go that route and actually put an additional fire pit or some kind of a wall or surround around the outside, it's important to note that you still need right around 6 inches of gap around the solo stove to make sure you have enough room for air to continue to get in on the bottom and combust through. Now, I want to talk for a few minutes about cleaning the solo stove. You can clean the solo stove and keep it in pretty pristine condition if that's what you'd like to do. Now, this is an outdoor heating appliance and we're using wood as the fuel. So we find that this is going to actually take on a natural patina over time. Now, you can combat that patina, but it's going to be some real elbow grease using something like Barkeeper's Friend to be able to get that clean on the outside. Now, the solo stove can be rinsed off simply with a hose, but our suggestion is that you get all of the ash out of the solo stove before you use the hose on it, as it just tends to gum things up. Now, taking the ash out of the solo stove is rather easy. One of the things that we purchased is the additional handle, and the solo stove handle has one that's specifically designed for each size of solo stove. The one for the Yukon is rather large, but it allows me to lift up this almost 40-pound fire pit with one hand. Whenever I'm trying to dump the ash, I just stick the handle in, I'm able to lift it, take it off the patio. You can empty the solo stove into your garbage can, but we recommend just emptying the ash into the yard or garden, as it helps balance the pH of your soil. To empty the ash out of the Yukon, one of the things that we do is we'll set it up and actually use a soft bristle brush to be able to knock all of the ash that's clumped together out of the Yukon. If all of the ash doesn't come out using that soft bristle brush, one of the things that we've learned is that you can actually set it on its side and roll it around in the yard so all that ash will continue to work its way out, and you'll actually have all of it out in no time. Just put it on its side, roll it around, and you'll find that it'll be clean as a whistle. Now, here's a pro tip that I wish I knew before our first cook with the solo stove. The ring on the top of the solo stove needs to be rubbed down with rubbing alcohol after you've touched it with your hands, because the oil that comes from your fingers will burn into the unit and discolor it permanently. In order to combat that, a simple swipe with rubbing alcohol will make sure that you don't have any fingerprints like we do on ours long term. If you don't want to take your solo stove off of the patio or the deck to clean it, shop vac is also another great option. Simply take all of the accessories off, stick the nozzle right in there, and you'll have that thing clean. Now, a question that gets asked all the time is, can you use the solo stove on wood decking or Trex decking? Well, the answer is yes, as long as you use the stand with your solo stove. If you don't have the stand, you really can't put it on that decking, as it will get too hot. But just that little bit of separation that allows air to flow underneath is going to make it so you can use it on Trex and wood decking without any problems. We've also been able to see people use the stand and the solo stove on top of an outdoor rug without any problems. So it really gives you that buffer that you need between the hot solo stove and whatever surface you have it on, as long as you put it on the stand. Now, embers are something to consider when you think about where you're going to put your solo stove, because you do occasionally get something to pop and explode out of your solo stove. But that's just really the whole point of burning with wood, right? That's going to happen. And so one of the additional accessories that you can get is called the spark shield. Now, the spark shield makes it so that when the wood pops and cracks, that things don't fly out of the solo stove and stay contained within the unit. But that's when it's really important to make sure that you stay under that 22-inch measurement for wood, so that you can still use those accessories and keep everything inside when you're burning. Another question that people ask all the time is, can you cook on a solo stove? Well, the answer is yes and no, but really I would say if you're looking at doing s'mores and you want to do marshmallows, go for it. But I will say you can cook a marshmallow for s'mores in about 10 seconds over a solo stove. If you're used to taking a marshmallow and rolling it over on top of the campfire for 2 or 3 minutes to get it nice and melty, That's not an issue with the Solo Stove. You actually will have that marshmallow melted and completely charred if you want it in about 15 seconds. We highly recommend the Solo Stove roasting sticks. We picked that up as an accessory for our Solo Stove, and we use it for marshmallows and hot dogs all the time. Some additional features that I really like about these roasting sticks is that, number one, they come apart into two pieces. That makes cleanup and storage quite easy. But the number one thing I love about the roasting sticks is that they're so heavy duty. We purchased many roasting sticks from various big box stores like Lowe's and Home Depot here in the States, and we find that they'll last a season or two at most, but a lot of them are flimsy and they kind of fall apart over time. These roasting sticks from Solo Stove are incredibly thick and really robust, and I imagine that they're going to last us many, many years to come. They come in a really nice foldable PVC case that keeps everything together when they're not in use. Now, hot dogs on the Solo Stove, we're a big fan of Nathan's hot dogs up here, and I've just got to say, when you put a Nathan's hot dog on those Solo Stove sticks and stick it over the campfire, you can have it ready in about 30 seconds. It's truly impressive the amount of heat that comes out of the Solo Stove Yukon when you have it loaded with 8 or 10 splits of wood. The real downside to cooking on a Solo Stove is that you're introducing drips of fat and liquid into the Solo Stove itself, which can really gum up the works when it comes to being able to clean it out. So that's the downside to cooking on it. You definitely can, you just have to be willing to put a little bit more effort into cleaning it. There are a ton of accessories that are available for your Yukon or Solo Stove fire pit. When you think about these accessories, there's so many to choose from. I want to start by just talking about one of the most simple ones. It's called the lid. The lid is a stainless steel top that allows you to put on a warm fire pit to be able to make sure that no rain or water can get in overnight. Now, this isn't something to be put on your raging hot fire pit to be able to snuff out the fire. That's not how the lid is used. But when your fire pit is just warm at the end of the day, you can put the lid on top, and it makes it so that you have an easy cleanup with no moisture coming in overnight. And also, when the fire pit is not in use, the lid allows you to be able to use the Yukon as a table. Now, we purchased the Backyard Bundle when we picked up our Solo Stove Yukon, and the Backyard Bundle comes with the Spark Shield, it comes with the stand, and it comes with the shelter. Now, the shelter is a PVC top that allows you to put it over the top. Definitely only use that when it's completely cooled off, but that gives you the ability to keep things from getting in. Another accessory that we really like are the fire pit tools. We picked those up after we purchased our Yukon, and we find that we use those quite often to move logs around in the fire when things are super, super hot. If we have something that allows us to not close the lid or put the spark arrestor on, it allows us to be able to move that so we can make that happen. I talked a little bit earlier about the handle, but I have to say we really love the handle as an accessory because it allows us to be able to take the Yukon with one hand, with one person, and move it anywhere around the yard. Before we picked up the handle, or before we even knew that it was an accessory that was available, every time I wanted to move the fire pit around, I had to yell at Melissa and ask her to come out and help me with this, and it just got to be, annoying every time we wanted to move the thing around to have two of us to be able to pick it up. With the handle, it's easy. Slide that thing in, pick it up, and you're on the go. So in conclusion, the question we get all the time is the Solo Stove Yukon truly a smokeless fire pit? Well, the answer to that is yes, as long as you have got the fire hot enough to achieve that secondary burn. If you haven't achieved the secondary burn, you can still see smoke coming out of the Yukon. But if you do it properly and you get the fire hot enough like they instruct you to, it truly is a smokeless fire pit. There's been many fires where at the end of the night we asked each other, do we need to take a shower or clean up? And we can't smell smoke on ourselves. Even the next day, I would pick up a jacket that I was wearing around the fire and I would give it a sniff. It doesn't smell at all like smoke. So it truly is a smokeless fire pit as long as you get that secondary burn going. So overall, what do we think about the Solo Stove Yukon? The Solo Stove Yukon is a stainless steel fire pit that truly is a smokeless fire feature to gather around in the backyard. Both our kids and our guests love it. It's amazing how much heat can come out of a simple stainless steel fire pit. Melissa actually got me the Yukon as a Christmas present, and I've got to say, I love it. And it's been great to have a fire feature to gather the family around on the back patio. If you're interested in the Solo Stove Yukon or any of the other models of Solo Stove, check the links in the description below. We have all of the Solo Stove models linked there for you. It'll take you right to the Solo Stove site where you can find out the current pricing on each model. And if you purchase with our link, it just supports our channel. We'll receive a small commission that allows us to keep making videos just like this so that you know what to buy and what to ignore when it comes to outdoor cooking and outdoor living. If you'd like to connect with us, make sure you follow us on social media. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We're out there on all of the social media channels. We'd love to connect with you as we're continually posting the sales that we know of in outdoor cooking and outdoor living, as well as our favorite recipes, and we'll let you know whenever a new review is up on the channel. And if you click that notification bell, you won't have to come find us when a new video pops up. It'll actually let you know when we put a new review out or a new recipe right into your email. You can also find us on our website at thebarbecuelab.com, where you can find even more detail about each review that we have here. I want to say thanks for joining us here at the Barbecue Lab today, and I can't wait to see you right here on the channel as we review the best in outdoor cooking and outdoor living. We'll see you soon.